Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's viewers top 10 best episodes and top 10 worst episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation as voted by you, the viewer, not me. I kept my list out of that. But Alyssa has, over here. Alyssa, over here. This way.
No, you were right just a second ago.
Yeah. Alyssa has her list on here, but not me. I'm staying out of it. But yes, joined by Alyssa. Alyssa, thanks so much for joining for this.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to seeing what everybody picked for the best and the worst of the best Star Trek show, in my opinion.
Close second, in my opinion, but still. All right. So I asked everyone, all my viewers, to submit their top 10 list, top 10 best episodes, top 10 worst episodes. And I had 16 submissions. So I just want to call out the people. Thank you so much for submitting your lists. So we have Ricky, Norman Buchwald, Alex Woodham, J. Kamen 99, Kyrie 091, Stephen Kennedy, High Five 789, Captain Powerless, Benjamin Mead, Greg Marley, Jordan Johnson, Grace, Maddie Jester, Aaron Lee, or is it Leah? Aaron Leah, maybe. And Brandon Neal Howells and Alyssa. So I'm going to be shouting out as we go down the list who was highest on each of the entries on the list. Now, how I contabulated all the lists and joined them together was I did a point system. So it's kind of like in reverse order. So the episode people put as their number one would get 10 points, and then number two would get 9 points, and number three, 8 points, and so on and so forth. And did that for both the best and the worst list. So each episode had a number of points. So obviously the episodes that were on more lists are higher, and then if they're higher on those lists, they're even higher. So that's how it works. And I came up with a top 10 best and top 10 worst. So, but before we get in that, we'll start with the worst list. But before we get into that, I want to call out 6 episodes that were on both best and worst lists, which I was wondering if there would be any for Next Generation. There was I think there was 10 or 11 for the original series. I foolishly thought there might be none. I thought, oh, there's not going to be any episodes on that are best on both lists, but I was wrong. There's 6.
So did none of these make the top 10s of either of them, or some of them did?
Some of them did, but I'm going to call them out anyway.
Okay.
But the first thing, so there were 6 episodes. 3 of them were on my top 10 list. So, yeah. And I was wondering, Alyssa, if you want to guess, if you have any guesses on what any of these 6 episodes could be.
I bet one of them is Fistful of Datas.
That's actually didn't make a best list.
Okay, because everybody thinks it's so great. And every time I talk about how much it sucks, people are like, oh, but I like Fistful of Datas. Like, so many people seem to like it. Okay, that was my guess, so I don't have another guess. I don't know.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Can't think of something that would be my top 10 that people might not like? No.
I don't know. Just tell me. Don't keep
okay. Okay. All right. So, first one is The Survivors, which was one of the ones in my top 10. I don't know why someone put that on their worst list. That got 4 points for best, 4 points for worst, so not very much. The next one is Starship Mine. I'm kind of surprised that ended up on either best or worst list.
Yeah, that's just kind of a very mediocre, middle of the road episode to me. Like, I wouldn't put it on either list.
It's like Picard and Die Hard. Yeah. But all right, and The next one's another one on my top 10 list was this preemptive strike.
That was the worst list? Somebody
Yes,
had that
that
on the worst
was.
list? Oh, that
Yes.
surprises me.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because, not to call them out by name, but it was Stephen Kennedy because he hates that episode, and he's been very vocal about hating that episode. He wrote like a super long comment for my video saying how much he hates it.
Oh,
yeah.
So far, like I wouldn't have been able to guess any of these. So.
Oh, right. Well, I might have been able to guess this next one because I used to hear a lot of people putting it down. And that's another one for my top 10, Frame of Mind.
Oh, yeah. That didn't quite make my top 10. That's in my top 20 of Next Generation. But I've always thought everyone liked it. So I guess I'm a little surprised by that one, too.
But that had 34 points for the best and only 7 for the worst. So overwhelmingly, it was tilted towards the best. But yeah. And the other one is Dark Page. I was kind of surprised about this one.
Yeah, I see. Again, I wouldn't put that on either list for me.
Yeah, me neither. It's probably if I was ranking a Loxana Troy episodes, it would be number 2.
It would be the best Loxana Troy episode, probably.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Half a Life would be the best one.
Yeah, Half a Life would be 1, and that would be 2.
But that's like, I mean, ranking Loxana Troy episodes.
And the last one, and this is another one I'm not surprised because when I was younger I used to love this episode, and then when I got older I hated it, and now I'm kind of indifferent to it, and that's Remember Me.
Yeah, I've always kind of liked that episode. I didn't like it as much now as I used to when I was younger, but I still don't hate it. So yeah, no, you wanted me to guess. I would not have guessed a single one of those.
Oh, really? Yeah. The only one I might have been able to... Well, I might have been able to guess Remember Me, but also Frame of Mind. Because I just know there seems to be people who like and hate those. Oh, and another one I will shout out that actually didn't make a best list, and I'm very upset. It was only on the worst list. It was just one entry, though. It was The Mind's Eye. I'm like, The Mind's Eye? Like, seriously?
Yeah. The Mind's Eye was in my Star Trek top 100. I think it was like in the 80s or something. Like it was back there. But it's in my top 100. So I think very highly of that episode. Not in my top 10 of Next Generation, but I think very highly of it.
It's in my top 20.
Yeah, I can't remember if it quite made it into my top 20 or not. Because I did when I did my top 100 in Next Generation, some episodes that didn't even make it into my top 20 were on the back end of the list, because I think I probably had like 25 to 30 Next Generation episodes in my top 100. But so, yeah.
All right, so I just want to say hello to everyone in the chat. Seems like it's been pretty lively. Let's see, Norman Buchwald is in a work meeting, but joining here at the same time. And thanks so much for joining. And then Jordan Johnson, J. Kamen 99, Tyler Cease, Brandon Neal Howells. Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining. So we got a super chat from Jordan. Saying, Mark, I just finished watching your review of Course Oblivion. Thank you for gifting me the phrase pretentious wankery. Well, I didn't come up with that. I thought that was common, but it might have just been common when I was living in New Zealand. That's maybe more of a British thing, but yeah. Let's see. And what else is going in the chat? Is The Lost on the list anywhere? Well, you'll find out. I wouldn't put out hopes for it being on the best list. I'll say that. What was the question? This question I asked earlier. Oh, I don't know. Don't like Frame of Mind, but it wasn't in my top 10 worst. Let's see. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the worst list. Let's see if I can bring that up. All right, so getting into top 10 worst, we had a tie for number 10. So this is actually going to talk about 11 episodes because I'm not going to. I thought maybe I'd find a funky way to break the tie, and I was like, nah, let's just do the full.
So
tie.
are you gonna give us the point totals too? As well?
Yes, yes, I shall. So the first episode tied for number 11 with a total of 22 points is The Game. And the highest on this was Alyssa, who had it at her number 2.
Used to be my number 1 when I did my video a couple years ago. The Game was my number 1 worst. I decided there's another episode that's probably worse than The Game, so I bumped it down to number 2. But yeah, to me that episode is the absolute worst in Wesley Crusher Mary Sue episode. So they like bring him back. He's not on the show anymore, and they bring him back to do like the worst Mary Sue episode that he could possibly do. And just so many things bother me about that episode, just like how Picard and Worf both get taken in by the game off screen. And I'm like, why is it off screen? Because there's no way that they would ever do it. Because if they tried to show you on screen, it would look so ridiculous. There's no way Worf would sit down and play that game. And just there's so many things wrong with this episode that it drives me up the wall. It's just this episode is just so stupid and obnoxious. And I also, just as a baseline, I already hate that like trope of everybody being, turned into zombies, or everybody one by one gets brainwashed. Or that's also why I hate that the TOS episode with when Spock and everybody starts tripping on mushrooms. that episode where like one by one everybody gets brainwashed. I can't stand that trope, just to start with. But everything about this, and Geordi being able to be taken by the game. He's blind. How was he? He's blind. How would he be brainwashed by something with visuals? I don't know. I hate this episode with a passion. I thought it wouldn't make the list at all, so I'm glad that it makes me feel good that it comes in as a tie at number 10.
All right, so Brandon's saying my computer's a bit staticky. Is it still being like that, or is it better? You don't hear any noise?
That's funny. I don't hear anything myself.
Okay.
You sound fine to me, but maybe it's different to other people. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, just checking. So The Game. Yeah, if you kept it at your number 1, then it would be a clean 10 rather than a tie. It's just 1 point away. But I agree with pretty much everything you say. When I haven't released it yet, but I redid my top 10 worst list for TNG, and it did make it. It was like number 8 on my worst list. So I still think it's one of the worst episodes. I just give it a TNG little bit more credit because I liked Robin Leffler and her relationship with Wesley, but that's the only thing I liked about it. Everything else about the episode is horrendous. Like everything.
And oftentimes I get comments, and actually I think my original worst video that I did for Acton Tompkins' channel, I would get, but Ashley Judd is in it. I'm like, okay. Ashley Judd's in it and she's hot, okay? That doesn't make the episode good.
Yeah. No, I don't care that she's hot. I just liked her relationship with Wesley. But it's funny because season 5, in my opinion, has the best and the worst Wesley Crusher episode, and they're the only 2 episodes he was in season 5. It's like, he's not even in that season. But the thing that gets me about that is those aliens really think they can take over the entire Federation by brainwashing people who obviously look drugged out of their mind, like they're having multiple orgasms, and anyone who's not hooked on the game yet can clearly see that this is a fucked up thing. And it's ridiculous that she thought she'd be able to take over the entire Federation like that. It's just
the whole premise is just so dumb. It is so dumb. Yeah.
And I think too many people do give this episode a pass. I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, but it's fun." I'm like, yeah.
Code 4.
That's what everyone says about terrible episodes.
Terrible.
All right.
What did you say the other one that was tied with was?
I have not. I'm about to say it now.
Okay.
So the other episode tied for number 10 is Manhunt. Also 22 points. Highest on this was Ricky, who had it at his number 3. I will. Sorry, just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jay came in 99 in the chat says, make sure I list who was highest in each episode. Don't worry, I shall do that. But anyway, go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah, I think I may have bumped it down a bit because then there was another episode we'll get to, I'm sure, that I was like, actually, that should be higher on my list. So Manhunt maybe used to be 2 or 3 for me, or maybe 3, but I think it ended up my latest list at 4. So it's close.
Actually, I have your list right here. The one you submitted, it was at number 5, apparently.
Oh, okay. It got there's so many bad episodes. It got bumped down. Yeah, it did get bumped down to 5, I think, because there was another episode that I wanted a little bit higher. Well, I'm sure we'll get to. Yeah, so 5. I mean, it's like it's still a terrible episode. It is one of the worst. I just have such a hard time sitting through that episode. There are so many issues with it. Just that it's like, I think you might have made the point, Mark, and your video that you did on this about like, what if the genders were reversed? Like if we listen to how the women are just talking about how Loxana is sexually harassing Picard and being like, oh, I mean, and just laughing about it. Like if we had reversed that, how horrific that would sound. Hopefully, to most of us, if it was men sitting there talking about that, about other men harassing women, and then just how this is okay, but it's not okay. It's still sexual harassment, and it also. I think the worst offense of this episode is that it tries to be funny and it's not even a teeny itty bitty bit funny.
Yeah. I mean, it just repeats all the same jokes from Haven. Like, and some of those jokes were funny in Haven because it's the first time you hear it. But then they just do it like more haphazardly. Like in Haven, they had Picard carrying Loxana's big heavy suitcase. In this episode, they have Riker doing it, and then the both episodes end with her being away saying, "Oh, Jean-Luc, how dare you think such naughty thoughts?" I'm like, you already fucking did these jokes, and it's just it's grating on my nerves. It's not just boring; it's grating. This is still my number 2 worst for TNG for me. Like, but of course, my list wasn't counted, but still, it's,
I would. I mean, I could easily put it in my. That top 5 I could kind of rearrange all day long.
Oh yeah,
top 5 worst. I could easily have this on my number 2 because it is abysmal. And also, the thing that I think I've said in my videos before is. Okay, so you're going through this thing. It's sort of like the Bajoran Poonfar kind of like it makes you all horny and everything. So why would you go to the Enterprise where all the men don't want you?
Exactly. That's exactly what I said. There's plenty of places where she could be able to find
Beta Z.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of Beta Z men that would be perfectly happy to have Loxana. But
and what really gets me is the whole, like, all of the humor in this episode is all based off, oh, she's just flirting with these guys who don't interested in her. Isn't that funny? It's kind of it's not only is it not funny, it's kind of offensive. And yeah.
This is a phrase that I often use. I think maybe I invented it. I don't know. I haven't heard really anyone else use this phrase, but the phrase that I like is actively unfunny. Which is not just unfunny, but actively unfunny.
Yes.
Meaning that it's not just that I don't find it funny, but that it just irritates. The attempt at the humor irritates and grates on me. Um,
Absolutely.
I know this is probably a long ways off still, but when we do the Deep Space Nine worst list, there's one on there that I feel the same way about, where it's just actively unfunny.
Yeah, the number one worst one. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But pretty much all Ferengi episodes, or
Yeah.
not all of them, but a lot
I'm
of them.
actually, yeah, no,
Yeah.
the number one worst one too. Well, I was thinking of my number two worst, Deep Space Nine, which also does involve Quark, but it's not a Ferengi episode.
I can't remember which one that is. Oh,
well. Rivals. Okay.
Oh, yes, of course. Of course. All right, so let's go ahead and move on from that terrible episode to the next terrible episode. So actually, I don't think this is a terrible episode, but we'll get to number 9 on everyone's list with 23 points. That's only 1 point up. Is Masks. Jay came in at 99, was the highest, had it at his number 2. And I actually think this is a good episode. I gave it a 7 out of 10, but I am not the least bit surprised to see it on this list. Alyssa, I'm pretty sure you agree more with the masses on this.
Yeah, one. I don't have it in my top 10 worst because there's just so many bad episodes. You can't fit them all into a top 10. But this is definitely just a ridiculous episode. And I definitely, even though it didn't make my list, I don't fault anyone for putting it on their list. I think it's a terrible episode. I do love that when Lower Decks did the parody of it, and he's going, "My name is Minutia."
That was
like, oh no, we were just cover up masks again. Oh god, just like I think I hate this episode for the same reason I don't know if this comes up on our list later, but the one I've aforementioned, Fistful of Data, says I just think Brent Spiner is, when he tries to do comedy, it's cringy. Like, it's really, or not just comedy, but like different characters that he tries to do, and he does these different voices. Like, it makes me cringe. Like, this isn't comedy, I guess, but he's like trying to do these different voices, and it's just like very, it makes me cringe. Like, it's just terrible. Just stop it. Just do Data. So I think that's one of my biggest problems with this episode.
So Brandon has my back saying, "How dare you? Masks is great fun."
Again, fun is a code for really dumb.
I don't think I would use the word fun for it. I just like it. I think it explores Picard's love of archaeology and has him try to solve this puzzle. The Enterprise being like transformed into a different thing, I think, is cool. And I'm actually on board with Brent Spiner's performance for the most part. Like, I think it comes off as really creepy to me, especially when he says, "What does it feel like for one to lose one's mind?" And the voices he does, like, "I am Ehab." Where he loses me, and where I think most people are probably picking up on, is when he does Masaka. He's like, "Go away!" Like, that's a terrible performance. But other than that, I was okay with him. But all right, let's see. Music is a collection of acoustic vibrations. How can I reproduce a sound with clay? Oh, it's a quote from the episode when he was doing the clay thing. All right, so let us move on to number 8. And this one is on my top 10 worst list. Lonely Among Us, with a total of 26 points. Highest on this was Benjamin Mead, who had it at his number 3. Yeah, do you remember this one clearly? Because it's one of those ones you kind of forget, like those crappy season 1 episodes kind of blend into each other.
Was this the one with the dog people and the
yes, the lizard people,
and then Picard goes off into the thing
he beams into space and then goes into the ship and then makes a P for Picard. it pops up on the console saying P for Picard, and it had one of the like moments I did this short, or I took it from one of my reviews, but it was like I was ranting and raving and cursing because at the end, like Tasha Yar goes to Picard and Riker is like, oh my God, there's been a murder on the ship. One of the delegates just killed another one. And Riker's response is, why are you bothering us with this? You deal with it. Come on, don't bother us with this. I'm like, what the hell? There was a fucking murder, like these two diplomats you were entrusted to. Were just one of them was murdered, and your response is go away and deal with it yourself. What the fuck? I don't know that. And the whole P for Picard thing really gets me. And the rest of the episode is just season 1 cheese to the max.
Yeah, I think that if I recall, when I did my original top 10 worst Next Generation list, maybe either my original one on Acting Top Go or the more recent one that I did, I talked about how season 1 was just so objectively worse than everything. If I were to just really sit down and like look at it objectively, my entire top 10 would probably be season 1. But because it's just Roddenberry was still involved, they hadn't figured things out yet. The writing and they hadn't figured it out yet. That it's almost like I kind of give most season 1 episodes a little bit of extra points, like a little bit of like leeway. And I do still have season 1 episodes in my worst list because those are like, to me, the worst of the worst. They're like extra bad for season 1. So this one is one that I agree is terrible, but like I can't just make my whole top 10 season 1. So it didn't make my list, but I don't begrudge anyone for putting it on there.
Well, I think I do kind of the same thing. I think I do like grade it on a curve, I guess you would say. I give season 1 episodes a bit more of a pass. Yeah. But this one in particular is one of the ones in season 1 that stands out as just being particularly terrible to me. And I will say with this list, they are not grading it on the curve. I don't think we'll see a lot of season 1 and 2 episodes here. All right, so let us move on. We're up to number 7. This is almost all season 1 and 2. But anyway, number 7, which is the outrageous Okana with 27 points, only 1 point higher. Captain Powerless was the highest, had it at their number 2.
But this episode is so fun.
It's got Joe Piscopo in it.
No, again, I also a terrible episode. Also not on my list, but I don't know. I don't really believe in so bad it's good, but I do admit that this episode does make me laugh a little bit. So this is so bad that I laugh at it, and I do take away, if I can get some sort of entertainment out of watching a bad episode, I do give it a little bit of credit, but it's still a bad episode. Don't get me wrong. I always laugh at the fact that this outrageous Okana comes aboard the ship, and all of a sudden, all the the women that we see, like the all the the like lieutenant, the background people, the lieutenants, the ensigns, all of a sudden, there are all these hot chicks, like out of nowhere, like they're just. Terry freaking Hatcher is in this episode. Like he comes aboard, and it's not Chief of Brain there, but it's Terry freaking Hatcher. Like, hi, hi, Okana. It's just so cheesy.
No, what really gets me is how cheesy his flirting is too. It's like, the beautiful woman. It seems very TOS.
Yeah, it is. It is very TOS. They had at season 2 here. This is early season 2. They haven't quite moved away from TOS yet.
Yeah,
they're still doing TOS type things.
I feel like, and part of my big issues with season 2, which I boiled it down when I was really analyzing the writing, is that Maurice Hurley, who was the showrunner, I think was a sitcom writer. I think he was always writing in the style of cheesy 80s sitcoms. And so you really feel that throughout season 2, and especially in episodes like this. And yeah, the whole side plot with Data trying to learn comedy was like, we'll use the term actively unfunny. It was just cringy. It was just, and yeah, Joe Piscopo is not a particularly good comedian. Apparently,
Go on.
I was just going to say, apparently they wanted to get Jerry Lewis for this, but he wasn't available.
No, Joe Piscopo he just himself is actively unfunny. Like I've never thought he has no talent. He has not an inch of funniness in his bone. The thing that always sticks out to me is like watching old Saturday Night Live episodes where he did a Frank Sinatra and impression, but he was doing like more of a tribute. And then a few years later, we have Phil Hartman coming and doing the same, doing the Frank Sinatra impression. It was like a gazillion times funnier because because Phil Hartman understood caricatures. Whereas like Joe Piscopo like was offended by Phil Hartman's impression because he like worshipped Frank Sinatra and like was doing a tribute to him. So he's just like some stuck up jackass white lounge singer type guy. So I mean, and in fact, it seems with Data kind of do remind they're Vic Fontaine-esque to me. So I just he's in that same vein, and he's just not funny. He never has been, whether he's on Star Trek or not. He's just has no talent and isn't at least bit funny. So like those scenes actually is the worst part of this episode for me. The Okana stuff I can kind of laugh at a little bit because it's so cheesy. This stuff I can't laugh at all because Joe Piscopo's in it.
No, I gotta be honest. Last time I watched this episode, there was a few moments in the Okana storyline which I laughed unironically at, and I was like, "Oh, yes, that's actually kind of a funny thing." But I mean, for the most part, it's just cheesy as hell. His whole demeanor, but like the whole Romeo and Juliet storyline they did at the end, it was like it was okay. I don't know. So yeah, I wouldn't put this in a worse list, but it's not a good episode for sure. All right. So, keeping with the same season, getting to number 6, everyone's collective number 6 is Up the Long Ladder with 32 points. So, a little bit of a jump. Norman Buckwald and Medi Jester were the highest, both had it at their number 2.
So, we haven't gotten anyone's number 1 yet. It looks like
not next one. We will.
Okay. Yeah, again, another episode. I mean, I can't fault people for putting it on there because they're bad. Like all these season 1 and 2 episodes are bad. But again, it's just when you're watching season 2, and it's just like another bad episode. I tended to put more of the episodes from later seasons that were bad because I feel like they have less of an excuse. So
yeah,
my top 10 is sprinkled with more season 4, season 5, season 6, season 7 episodes because I don't think they have an excuse to be that bad. Whereas season 1 and 2, like there's more of an excuse because the whole season was just bad. So I don't have all these season 2 episodes in my list, but I can understand, especially if you're British or Irish, like all these offensive. I don't know if any of you guys, you Mark or anybody watched Trek Cultures.
Yes, yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yes,
on Section 31, where Sean Ferrick, who is Irish, he starts off like, "This is my trillium down," and like it goes on for 10 minutes about the terrible Irish accent in that movie, and then he brings up the Long Ladder and the Spirit Folk and the other one. But yeah, I understand why people are offended by this episode and don't fault them. But again, I'm great on the curb, so I don't have all these season 2 episodes in my top 10.
I mean, I can understand them pinpointing this out of the first.
Yeah, I can too. Yeah,
because it was like when he drank that Klingon drink, and it was like, That was like literally like out of like a cartoon.
Cartoon.
Like,
I will admit, I found that funny when I was 13.
Sure, when you're 13, yeah. But and I think I did too. But yeah, but the whole Irish thing, yeah, that is really offensive, and apparently Calmini was really offended by it, but was barely involved with the show at this point, so didn't feel like
but
he had the
does
clout.
later on. He gets
Yes.
when Deep Space Nine. He has the clout.
Yeah.
Them from using a leprechaun.
And again, like I was reading about the writing behind this episode, and Melinda Snodgrass originally had like an interesting idea, but it was Maurice Hurley who stepped in and was like, let's make them silly Irish stereotypes. So I really say that he was a terrible showrunner.
Yeah.
Anyway. I mean, the clone storyline I thought was okay, but
yeah,
it was, I don't
the
know.
clone storyline was almost kind of interesting. That's why probably this wouldn't make my worst list.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, the clone storyline to me felt more like a typical season 2 episode.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly stick out as terrible. But
yeah.
All right, so let us move on to the number 5. We're finally getting into season 1 and 2 for a bit. Number 5, which is The Loss. 36 points. Grace was the highest, had it at their number 1. And so this is, I believe, on both of our top 10 worst lists, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, my latest incarnation, I think it lands at number 6.
I can't remember where I had this. Number 5, maybe? So
yeah, right in the middle there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely counselor. Like, I was just the other day arguing with me in the comments. It's like, oh, why don't you like this episode? And I was like, well, because Troy's terrible. She treats everyone like shit. She's privileged just because she lost this ability that no one else has. And then she's saying she can't do her job anymore. Well, guess what? That means she sucks at her fucking job. And she's treating all the people who love her, just trying to comfort her, treating them like ass. And it's just annoying, grating to watch. And this person's response was, oh, but that makes it more interesting that they're going outside their lovey-dovey, everything's perfect Gene Roddenberry box. I'm like, I mean, yeah, I like it when they go outside the box too, but for interesting storylines or dynamic characters,
when they turn their characters into assholes and treat them.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel bad for Dr. Crusher in that episode. She's trying to support her and be there for her, and Count Troy's a complete bitch and never apologizes. Never apologizes. When she gets her powers back, she's like, oh, I'm superior to you all again, so it's okay. Never apologizes to her friend. This is not interesting storytelling. This is not going outside of the box. This is having one of your characters be an asshole to their friends and never apologizing for it. Fuck that. Fuck Counselor Troy in this episode. This episode is terrible.
All right, so Tyler C's had a question for you involving this episode. Since you're such a strong supporter, I promised I'd ask. So the question is, in your review for The Lost, you said it was the first episode you remember hating, and it would be a while before you saw Code of Honor. How long would it be before you saw Manhunt or Shades of Grey? Well, that's what I said. Did you say
no? That question's for you, not for me.
Well, I thought it says it was one for, because I already answered his question.
Yeah, no, because that's true of you, not of me. I watched I saw Code of Honor when it aired. So no, that's not true of me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking. He was saying to ask the same question to you, so maybe he just misremembered.
Yeah.
But you saw Code of Honor when it first aired?
Yeah, I watched Next Generation when it first came on.
Oh, right.
I watched the whole first season as it originally aired.
Yeah, for me, I was watching reruns in season 4. They were showing it repeatedly, so I saw most of these season 4 episodes before I saw anything else.
Yeah,
and I remember seeing this one constantly. I'm like, stop showing this episode.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
so
no,
terrible.
that question seems to apply to you because that's not true for me.
Okay. All right. Well, we tried. Okay. So yeah. Anything else to say about the loss? Or...
Fuck Counselor Troy.
Just in this episode, you know what I noticed?
Just in this episode,
Yeah.
not in general.
You know what I
Although there's
noticed?
some other annoying episodes that she has. This is the worst one.
And I have this opinion. I don't know if other people agree with me, but after going through the whole show, I feel like the writers finally learned how to write for Troy in season 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Particularly season 7, I think they did a good job writing for her. And I think those.
Yeah, I think that in general, and this isn't true 100% of the time, but I do feel like very often the writers of this era of all of the TNG, DS9, Voyager struggle with writing for women.
Yes.
For women characters. I've said that about B'Elanna Torres many times. They just don't know how to write for her. And I think that that's true for Counselor Troy for a lot of the show. But I do agree. Season 6, yes. Season 7, yes and no. I think there's still some pretty awful writing for Counselor Troy in season 7 as well. But
I don't know. I think she got better in season 7. I would say that was her best season. But that's
there's maybe after we do our top 10, I can talk about. I don't think it made the list, but I have a season 7 episode where she's the feature.
Oh, I know what episode you're talking about. Yes, that is okay. That one episode is terrible.
So I think that there are some bad. I'm just saying it's not perfect in season.
Yeah,
like they still have some bad episodes for.
I mean, well, every character has bad episodes in every season. I just think overall is a better season for her. Yeah, and I totally agree with, and that's I think TNG in particular has a problem with writing for women. Like Voyager is off and on because sometimes they do really good with Janeway in 709. I think they just never really caught B'Elanna's voice.
Yeah.
But DS9, I think, is very good most of the time.
Actually, DS9 is probably the best out of them. But like, Voyager does not know how to write for B'Elanna. And then the thing with 7 of 9 and with Janeway is they're kind of all over the place with them.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so I think TNG is the worst overall.
I agree.
All right, so let's move on to number 4. Getting back into season 1 is Angel 1, 37 points, so just one higher. Alex Woolham was the highest, had it at their number 2. So yeah, to me, I never hated this episode as much as everyone else did. To me, this is just a typical bad season 1 episode. I don't think it particularly stands out as being particularly worse. I mean, yeah, it has the bullshit with Riker sleeping with the head of state and that somehow being okay, and Troy and Yar like teasing him and like harassing him for like dressing up and giving him a hard time and shit. But for the most part, and it has this really like one of the dumbest like virus things where for some reason Dr. Crusher is completely immune for no reason whatsoever to the virus, and everyone else gets sick. And like she even goes out to Picard and is like, smells, oh, what's that smell? Oh, it's the smell that's making people sick. Then why aren't you getting sick right now? Because you just smelled it.
Well, it's just like Riker being immune in the Naked Now.
Oh god damn.
Season 1, they just gotta have people be immune to viruses for no reason. Yeah, I mean, and again, I agree with you. It's just another typical bad season 1 episode. It doesn't stand out to me, but I do have issues with it. I see what they're trying to do. This is like 1980s feminism, like or like, oh, look at this, look. We have these women who are dominating the society. Look, it's a feminist episode. But then in the end of the day, all they really want is a strong man. That's why they go to those rebel dudes or whatever. And then what's her name
Yeah.
goes to Riker. So yeah, they're really strong, but really they just can't help themselves. They're women. They have to have these strong men. So it's like one of those episodes that thinks it's feminist, but is the opposite. So yeah, I can't begrudge people for ranking it in their top 10. I just not. It's not in mine, but I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what you were saying about grading season one on a curve. Like that's why it wouldn't make. But yeah, I know. I totally get that. Yeah, the whole thing with. Yeah, it's just the whole thing with. I don't know. It's just dumb. I mean, what gets me is the ending where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna let you live out in this isolated area where no one else lives, and there's you're gonna have to live on your own." And everyone's like, "Oh, that's a win." I'm like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna slowly die on their own. That's much better than executing them right away." Like, I don't even see how that's a win. But anyway, all right, so. Norman Bucklaw saying women led that act like a patriarchy. Exactly. But anyway. All right. So we will getting into the top three now. And so that one was 37 points. This next one is 78. So more than double. So it's a huge hop and a jump and a skip over to the next one of the more highly rated ones. And for this episode, I do have a warning for you. Dinner light the candle and dinner go to the house. It is Sub Rosa with 78 points. Ricky, Stephen Kennedy, Brandon Neal Howes, and Alyssa all had this as their number one.
I was surprised there wasn't more people. I was kind of expecting this to be number one or number two at least.
So was I.
Yeah, this is the one where I just after, I don't know, years of people talking about it and me thinking about it more, and I'm like, okay, this is probably worse than the game. So I'll go ahead. I think it actually deserves to be my number one. It's not even so bad it's funny. Like, I just don't even find it, like, I can't even get any kind of entertainment out of it. It's just so hard to sit through this episode.
Yeah, so this is also my number one as well, even though
you just don't count yourself.
Yeah, I don't count. Yeah. Didn't include mine in the scores, but if it did, it'd be another. It might, 10 maybe points.
It would, yeah.
But yeah, so I said before that I have fun mocking this episode. I don't have fun watching it.
Yeah.
It's still a pain in the ass to watch it because it's just so terrible. And I think that's why I think that's why it didn't make it to number 2 or 1, because a lot of people had this on their list, but it was on some lists it was actually lower. It was like 10 or 9. And someone even said in parentheses, "No, this is so bad it's good." So it's a fun to watch episode.
Yeah, I just have no fun watching this episode at all. It's fun, like you said, it's fun to make fun of it in retrospect. I love that Lower Decks has poked fun at it, but it's not fun to sit through. It is just it's torture to sit through this episode.
Yeah, no one's quoting it. "You're not Nana. Nana's dead. Leave her alone." Like that's. I'm sorry. Like, I think Gates McFadden does give some good performances in the show. I was noticing that as I was going through, but this I hear to performance, and not just this episode, just some others too. But this, she's absolutely horrendous. Like, it's just. And you do have to blame the writers too, because they give her crap to say. But still, it's like it's just like watching her like sitting there being molested by this green smoke and orgasming while Picard walks in on her. It's like, what what the fuck show is this? Like who saw this on the page like, oh, this is good, let's film this. Like what the hell?
Yeah, and I'm gonna disagree with Jordan Johnson. I think stupid and funny beats boring. This is not funny at all. This is just not. I just don't get any entertainment out of this. Like it's just so, yeah, cringy, and the dialogue is so cringy in this episode. Yeah, and Dr. Crusher is being raped by a ghost, as Brandon points out, and it's just like ha ha ha. Yeah, I don't know. I just can't get any.
Yeah.
I can't get any entertainment out of this.
No, and yeah, and it's also a very negative portrayal of women as well, because they have Troy like sort of egging Crusher on. Oh, you're reading your grandmother's, you're getting off, and what you're reading your grandmother his journal about her having sex with a younger man. Oh, I'm like, what? Like, the whole episode is just
yeah.
It's terrible.
But again, I can get a lot of fun out of making fun of the episode in retrospect, but not in actually watching it.
Absolutely. Anyway, okay, so we'll move on to the number 2, which had 100 points. So even if I did include my 10 for Subversa, it would still not catch up, especially since this episode would get 9 points from me because it was my number 2. And number 2 on this list as well, it's Shades of Grey. 100 points. But only one person had it at their number 1. Jay came in 99, was the highest on this. So it was more consistently towards the top of everyone's list, which is why I think it beat out Subversa. Yeah. Thoughts on Shades of Grey?
Not really. I have. Yeah. This. I think that. It's an awful episode. I ended up at my number 4. I think it got bumped down by one that I'm going to assume is probably going to end up being our number 1, but that I moved up my list a little bit. But again, the top 5, like I could rearrange all day long because this is a pretty terrible episode. I think maybe I just gave it like teensy bit of a pass for the writer strike and all that stuff. Not that much of a pass. It's still my top 5 worst of Next Generation. It's still number 4 for me. But it's so hard to rank all of these episodes because but yeah, the premise is stupid. The episode itself is boring. Like not only is it a flashback episode, but it's not even interesting flashbacks. The flashbacks that they show, the scenes that they show are just not even good scenes. Like, and then the whole premise is just dumb. So yeah.
I said I had this as my number 2. That's actually wrong. It was my number 3. Number 2 is Manhunt. That's right.
Yeah.
But this is my number 3. But yeah, I think, and not you, Alyssa, but other people give it way too much of a pass. Be like, oh, you couldn't even call the bad episode because there was a writer's strike on and they didn't have that much money to make this one. And like, I guarantee you, if Michael Piller was the showrunner, if this happened in season 3, where they said you have to do an episode with this minuscule amount of money, he wouldn't have done a fucking clip show. he would have done like a bottle show with 2 people in the room talking. He would have done fucking something like Duet or something like that. He wouldn't be like, oh, let's just show this is Maurice Hurley and his 80s sitcom mentality. Like, let's do a fucking clip show. And it's not just that it's a clip show. It's that it's a particular bad clip show.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't even show good clips.
Yeah, and the framing plot to it is so dumb. It's like, oh, the virus is dying when he's happy, or when he's sad or angry, and it's grows worse when he's happy. Like, that's so dumb. It's just like Troy and Pulaski. All the new footage is just Troy and Pulaski just standing over him, going, "Oh, he's getting better. Now he's getting worse. Oh, he's getting better." Like, it's just a totally useless episode.
Yep. Yep.
I think, yeah, Jay came in saying, I'm shocked by that. I thought this would be the worst. Yeah, I mean, kind of really. But anyway, it's Hearts and Minds from Lost. Half the episode didn't even happen. Well, I mean, it's clips. It's not like it didn't happen. But anyway, all right. So, without further ado, we'll get to our collective number one. And you will have no treaty, no vaccine, and no Lieutenant Yard. Number one is Code of Honor with 120 points. Norman Buckwald, Alex Woolham, Captain Powerless, Benjamin Mead, Greg Marley, and Matty Jester all had this as their number one. Highest for most people. So, Alyssa, is this the episode you were presuming would be number one?
Yeah, and this was the one when I did my top 10 video a few years ago. It came in at number 5, because again, I could just rearrange the top 5, but then just thinking about just like how racist this episode is, and like I gotta bump it up the list a little bit. So it finishes out at my number 3. So it ended up at number 3 for me. But yeah, not surprised at all that it is number 1. And I think that's good because it's a racist as fuck episode and probably deserves to be the worst.
Yeah, I had it at my number 4, so it was kind of similar. Whereas I remember when I did my top 10 worst episodes of the franchise, people were guessing it would be in it. And I was like, oh, not quite. It was in my top 25 worst of the whole franchise. I think it was number 14, so yeah, close. But yeah, no, I don't begrudge anyone for putting this number 1. I'm not surprised. I think maybe I'm doing that little bit of a curve thing, but yeah, even for season 1, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for how racist this episode is, and kind of sexist too, and the whole. What I hate about it, it's funny because I read this quote from Rod Roddenberry saying, oh, the story might not be that good, but the music in that episode was really good. And I was like, the music is shit. It's like the worst music. It's because they got someone from the original series to do the music for this episode. And it was the only episode from TNG that did that. And so sounds like terrible, outdated 60s music is absolutely horrible. And like the whole storyline, even if you forget about how racist and sexist it is and whatnot, the whole storyline is dumb, is ridiculous, and it's like Picard, like they kidnap his chief of security and he has to be like, oh, thank you so much for kidnapping my chief of security, please, you are so awesome for doing that, now can you give her back? And I'm like, there's only so much like Starfleet should go to do diplomacy. Like that's bullshit. I don't know. And the whole episode is dumb. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like you're wearing blinders. Like you're so ignorant. And like, how can you not see? You can't see your own privilege writing this episode. It's like, oh, so most of the society in this time period is white. So to see black people, you got to go to some far off, distant, exotic planet with these alien black people. It's and yes, I know Geordi is there, but most of the crew is white as far as the humans go. And Michael Dorn is African American, but he's playing a Klingon. So it's and it's just like, can you not even see?
Yeah. So this was the only episode of the show that Michael Dorn wasn't in, and he was very happy about that. And he was even saying at the time when he wasn't there, but when they were filming and he heard about it, he was like in awe. It was like, they're actually fucking doing this? Like, what the hell? And I think Jonathan Frakes has been on the record saying it's a racist piece of shit. I think LeVar Burton, said it was a low point for the show. I think there was a story with Garrett Wang who played Harry Kim, he had the story that this was the only episode of TNG he watched, and he gave up. He's like, "Oh, this is a terrible show. I'm not going to watch it." So when he auditioned for Voyager, he didn't know anything about Star Trek, and then later went back and watched TNG. I was like, "Oh, it's actually a good episode."
Yeah, or actually a good show.
Yeah, good show. Yeah,
good show. Not episode.
No. But apparently, like, the episode was originally written so the alien race was supposed to be like these lizard people, and they weren't supposed to be black coated at all. That's apparently they hired the director, and he's the one that decided to do it this way. And the director himself is a kind of a known racist, and Gene Roddenberry fired him halfway through filming the episode. But by that time, it was too late to redo everything. I think they should have anyway, but I guess they didn't want to spend the money to redo it. But yeah. And I think it was Jonathan Frakes that said that he thought they should take it off the rotation and streaming services and reruns. And I disagree with that. I don't know. I think there's something about the historical aspect of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see that point of view too.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe there should be like a warning at the start of the episode, like they do for old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah.
And thanks, Jordan Johnson, for the super chat. No treaty, no vaccine, no Lieutenant Yar. Anyway. All right.
Do you mind if I share quickly what's on my list that didn't make this list?
Well, I was planning on going through all the episodes on the worst list very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you like doing that now?
Yeah, right now.
Oh, okay. Well, then go ahead.
All right. So tied for number.
Wait, hold on. I will raise my hand whenever you say one that was on my list.
Okay. All right. So tied for number 60 was The Outcast, Hero Worship, The Battle, and Suspicions. Tied for number 55 was A Matter of Perspective, Lessons, Realm of Fear, Loud as a Whisper, and Conspiracy. Tied for number 52 was Data Lore, Phantasms, Journey's End. Let's see. And tied for number 46, Transfiguration, Suddenly Human, Will Always Have Paris, The Last Outpost, The Survivors, The High Ground. Tied for number 42, The Vengeance Factor, Home Soil, Emergence, and Starship Mine. Tied for number 38, Eye of the Beholder, Unnatural Selection, The Big Goodbye, Preemptive Strike. Let's see. Tied for number 31, Frame of Mind, Cost of Living, The Host, The Masterpiece Society, Interface, The Mind's Eye, and The Royale, but not with cheese. And tied for number 25 was In Theory, Aquiel, A Fistful of Datas, The Icarus Factor, Bloodlines, Justice. And tied for number 23 was Too Short a Season and Dark Page. Let's see. Tied for number 19, The Bonding, The Shizoi Man, The Child. Yeah, just those. And number 18 was Remember Me. Tied for number 16, Imaginary Friend and Force of Nature. Let's see. Tied for number 14, Night Terrors and Hide and Q.
Night Terrors is a good episode.
Yeah. And tied for number 12, Man of the People and The Naked Now. Naked Now barely. I thought it was going to make it at one point. But yeah. And then I already went through the top 10. So, yeah.
Yeah, Eye of the Beholder, Fistful of Data's, Data Lore, Imaginary Friend. My 10 through 7 didn't make the list.
Yeah, I think you were the only one who voted for Data Lore.
Yeah, out of all the first season episodes everyone else picked, to me, this stands out as the one of the worst because it is the worst Wesley Crusher episode in the first season. Like everybody complains about Wesley Crusher being a Mary Sue, and yet they somehow like the absolute worst Mary Sue episode that he did in the first season, which was Data Lore, where the entire Enterprise crew is a complete moron except for Wesley.
I don't know why. It's always been a well-liked, beloved episode. Like,
but
even now, like, I hear some reviewers even now saying, "Oh, that's one of the standouts of season one. It actually was good." I'm like,
"Oh, so it was good when Laura goes, beautiful, and they're just all staring, and they're like, "But he's Laura. Shut up, Wesley. They don't always talk like that." What? Oh, I think people like it because Picard says "Shut up, Wesley," but Picard was a moron in that. Wesley was right.
Yeah.
Wesley should have been telling him to shut up. So he's the one being a complete idiot.
Yeah, I was sad that Rascals only made it to 22. I was very disappointed. I thought that should have been higher. And yeah, and some of these episodes is like weird, but I guess like the bonding or yeah. What a dark page. Yeah, a fistful of Data's only made it to 28. I'm not too surprised.
Because a lot of people like that episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Masterpiece Society is only at 34. What the hell? That's in my top 10 worst. I think
it didn't quite make mine, but like, too many bad episodes.
Yeah, because people that pick too much on the season 1 and 2 episodes. No, the ones in later seasons that are bad are worse because they have no excuse. All right. Okay, so
I need a little bit of an intermission in between before we get to the best. So if you want to talk amongst yourselves for a minute.
I do as well. So I'm just going to leave this for a second. Take the opportunity to go. So we will be right back.
How's that Monty Python intermission music go again? It's like
Yeah, sorry, I did not have that ability. Did not think ahead to get Monty Python. I'm not actually familiar with that.
Yeah, I have a little crossover with Alyssa's live chat with wine.
Yeah. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Quite a little bit of wine. This is a Merlot.
All right. Let's see. All right, so had everyone's list. No, Brandon wasn't the highest on Up the Long Ladder. That was at his number 10. Who did I say was the highest on the Up the Long Ladder? Was Norman Buckwald and Mighty Jester. They both had it as their number 2. But anyway, yes, it was Norman. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the best work list. cleanse our palate after talking about these bad episodes. All right, so let me bring that up. Okay, so this one is a clean 10. So we'll start at number 10, best episode, it has according to you all. And that is Parallels with 24 points. J came in 99, was the highest, had it at their number 1.
There's something parallel. I'm always thinking about what I think of this. There's something parallel. I had this at my number 9, so pretty close. Pretty close.
Yeah, I was surprised this one made it this high. I was also surprised that it wasn't one of the episodes that made both best and worst, because so I remember I got this comment a long time ago when I did like this top 10, alternate reality parallel universe list, and this was on there like pretty high. And so it got this comment saying, well, nobody likes this episode, and people don't like this episode. And then I went on IMDb, it was like in the top 10. I'm like, what are you talking about? People don't like this episode.
Maybe their own personal group of 3 friends don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this, to me, we're finally breaking out of this mirror universe mold. Like this mirror, like we're trapped in the like there's only one other universe, and it's the mirror universe, is the way that Trek had behaved outside of this episode. Honestly, until very recently. So this was like the only one that really kind of stepped outside of that box. And I always found this concept so fascinating, that like the universes are so close together that like sometimes it could just be a difference of a painting on the wall, and then you just get gradually further away from your own universe. Next thing you know, Worf is first officer and Wesley is the security chief. So I love how they just kind of gradually move us through the different universes, and I just love the whole concept of it. I think I tried to write I've tried a couple different times to try to write stories that are not in the Star Trek universe, that are in our universe, that have the same concept, and then I just lose interest and stop writing them. But I've always been interested in this concept. And I do like that they do use Worf as a main character. I think he wouldn't have been my first choice for the main character for an episode like this, but I think that because he is, like, if you had Data or Geordi in it, like they would know more of the mumbo jumbo and more of the technobabble, whereas Worf is just a completely like, what the hell is going on to me kind of thing. So I think Worf actually worked as a main character for this.
Sorry, got distracted by the chat because Jordan Johnson pointing out that he was actually the highest and up the long ladder because he had it as number 1. And I did record it. I just forgot to, when I was saying who was the highest, I forgot to, for some reason, that you had it at number 1. So you were actually the highest. Okay, you're correcting me on that. But the score was right, though. I did record your score in the total, so the numbers are still the same. But anyway, yes. So Parallels. You're muted?
Yeah, I'm not muted. Yeah, I was muted. I was gonna say with Jay came in 99. I don't agree. It would have been cool to go to the Mirror Universe because this is the one episode where they don't go to the Mirror Universe. And at this point in time, the Mirror Universe hadn't been overdone yet, but they were starting to get there. And like they were already had it in a couple seasons of Deep Space Nine at this point, or maybe they'd only had one. So they hadn't overdone the Mirror Universe yet. But in retrospect, now that they've just beaten the Mirror Universe to death, that I think that this is a refreshing episode to go back and watch, because there isn't the Mirror Universe. They show that there's other universes besides the Mirror Universe in the vast multiverse.
Yeah, well, since I just watched this recently by air date, I know that Crossover actually aired several months after this episode.
So at this point, Yeah, so at this point they hadn't overdone the mirror universe yet. They only had that one.
But I love that TNG never did the mirror universe.
But looking at it now, in retrospect, and seeing all the mirror universe episodes that have come, that it just makes it even better for me that they didn't go there. And then, of course, Lower Decks recently getting into similar territory as this, and I love that concept as well. But it doesn't always have to be the mirror universe.
Yeah, that ending, like towards the end, the ending part of this episode is what really gets me when all the enterprises start like millions of enterprises starts filling into the universe. I remember being so blown away by that. And as I was saying recently, like if I saw that today, I'd be like, oh yeah, this again, because it seems like that's more common now with all the Marvel stuff. But no, like at the time I was like, holy shit, like this is so original. And I do like that Worf was the main character for this, that they didn't have someone like Data or Geordi, someone who's not really science minded and all this weird shit's happening to them.
Yeah, I said that, but I think you were preoccupied with the comments. But yeah. And this to me is the one and only episode where the Worf and Troy romance works, because it's not our main universe. It's not the main characters. I think the mistake was then trying to carry it over to our main universe, the Prime universe, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Whenever I hear Prime Universe now, I think of the Lower Decks episode where it was like, we're not the Prime Universe, we're the Prime Universe.
Because who's the Prime? It's all a matter of perspective who the Prime Universe is. But yeah, for us, the Prime Universe, the one we're used to, trying to carry this relationship over into that didn't work. But showing a what if kind of thing, like what if Troy and Worf actually did have chemistry, which they don't have in our universe. But Worf did have chemistry in some other universe, and exploring that. And then if it ended like, oh no, yeah, that's crazy, that would never happen, and that's the end of it, and it's never mentioned again, great. So I think because it's showing an interesting, fascinating possibility that isn't actually possible in our universe, it would have made it even better. So I think that it works for this episode and this episode only because it is other universes.
Yes. As the way I put it was, the Worf and Troy storyline works in this episode because look at how weird this universe is. Even Troy and Worf are a couple. It works in that regard.
Yeah.
But having it in the Prime universe, there's no excuse for it. It's like, But I actually think it worked well for this episode.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole thing of like, that's so weird. What a weird universe this is.
Yeah.
All right. So move over to our number 9. Let's see. Is this a tie? Yes. So there's no number 9. It's not two, there's a tie for number 8. So there's 2 episodes tied for number 8. So we'll get to the first episode and then the next one. So the first episode tied for number 8 is Chain of Command with a total of 31 points. Brandon Neil Howes was the highest at his number 2.
Cool. I didn't know, Brandon, you had this ranked so highly. I like it. I believe this was at my number 6, but it was in the teens in my top 100. It was like a number 16 or 17 or something. So I think very highly of this 2-parter as well. But it's mainly, honestly, part 2. I mean, that really... Part 1 doesn't suck or anything, but it's part 2 that kind of makes it for me. I'm not going to do the quote. You all know.
So this is at number 10 on my top 10 best list. And I think if I did my top 100 of the whole franchise, this would probably be maybe top 40, maybe top 50. But no, I still love this episode. Mainly because of part 2, like you say. And I think Jellicoe works well for this episode. You just have to bear in mind that he sucks as a captain.
Yeah. I don't know. This is just the performance by Patrick Stewart is just outstanding, and what I find this really interesting is that Picard is kind of able to turn the tables on the power dynamics with his captor. This is actually, the four lights thing, of course, is the most known line, but my favorite scene is when the what's his name, Golmuset, was that his name? Yeah.
No, Golmuset's the wounded. This is Gol Madrid.
Yeah, Goldman. Holy, it's all similar. Okay. Played by what's his name? The dude from Star Trek V.
David Warner.
David Warner, yeah, who has an excellent performance himself. But he's telling the story about how he was a little boy and I forget the point of his story now, but he's in control. He's using this as like sort of an intimidation tactic, and Picard is, he's just completely dry mouth and just completely beaten down and just destroyed. And he's like, "Now I will only see you as this little boy," and the guy just loses control and just starts. You're just going crazy with the torture device, and Picard's like, "Oh boy!" And like Picard is being tortured and going through all the pain, but he has the power over.
Yes.
And I just think that is so well written and so well acted that I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, that is an absolute amazing scene. I totally agree. Another part of that scene that I really love is when, like, Picard's going his rant. Oh, you're like when he's starting his rant, you're like a little boy, powerless, and he's like, "Picard, stop it!" He's like, "Ah, you called me Picard." Because he had said earlier he'd only refer to him as human, so it's like a sign to, "Aha, I'm getting the better of you. You're losing your shit." And it was like, and I think, didn't you use that as an example of why Picard was such a better negotiator than Jellicoe? because when Jellicoe was doing his thing, when the Cardassians like, "We have Picard," he was like, kind of caught off guard.
No, I think I said in my review that Picard was a better negotiator while being tortured than Jellicoe, who in theory should have had the upper hand. Yeah.
Terrible captain. But anyway, all right. So, and I want to address Jordan in the chat saying that that he had it on his list, but only part 2. But unfortunately, I'm not doing part 2s. I counted it as a thing for both because it's included for both episodes. So if anyone put part 1 or part 2 on their list, I just ignored it because I'm not splitting it. But that's just how I had to do it, so everything was uniform.
Yeah.
But anyway, so also tied for number 8, another episode that's also on my top 10 list. The Offspring, also 31 points. Benjamin Mead was the highest, had it at their number 1. But yeah, it wasn't in as many top 10 lists, but the ones they were in, it was pretty high. I absolutely love this episode. I love the tearjerker episodes. I love good Data episodes. I think this is probably the best Data episode, ones that explore his humanity. And I've said it before, like, I think this is a better episode than Measurement Man. And my viewership apparently agrees with me because it is. Measurement Man's not in the top 10, and this is. Because it's a different episode to be sure, but it has that moment where Picard stands up to Data at the end, which I just fucking love. I think it's so powerful where he's like stands up to the Admiral, is like, "No, hold your ground," and he gives this great speech, and it's like, order a man to order a man to turn his child over to the state, not while I'm his captain. Fucking, like, I was such one of the best badass Picard moments. I think I had when I did my top 10 Picard speeches, that was my number one. I just absolutely love it. And everything, of course, else about the episode, the Law and Data relationship is beautiful. And that ending is one of the most tear-inducing seeing endings, I think, of any episode of Star Trek. Just cannot help but bawl for that one.
Yeah, I agree. But when I did my top 20 a couple years ago, this came in at my number 11, so just outside of my top 10. So it didn't quite make it into my top 10, but that doesn't mean I disagree with anything you just said. Like I still, no, yeah, when that scene at the end where, I mean, this is one of the most tear-jerky lines in all of Star Trek to me. When Data's like, when they're just having that scene when she's dying, and he's like, I cannot cry, and she's like, I will cry for the both of us. Or wait, was it?
No, it was I love you, Father.
Wow, like, yes, I love you. Yes, I will feel it for the. No, I'm thinking of myself crying. I'm getting. Yeah, no. No, it was like, I will feel for the both of us. That was like, yeah.
Such a just powerful episode. Such a good episode. I think that's number. Is that number 3 on my best list? I think it is for me, my personal one.
Well, if that's in there, that means something on my list didn't make it, which I can kind of probably guess what on my list didn't make it. But well.
All right, so let's get to number 7. We're up to 7. Yeah, number 7 with 33 points is Tapestry. Matty Jester was the highest, had it at his number 2.
Yeah, and I believe this was my number 5. So I had it in my top 5.
I think this was my number 5 as well. I think before I had it as my number 4, but I swapped it down to 5. But yeah, it's still amazing episode about regret, and I just love the seeing Picard's past. The actor who plays his friend in the past is not very good, but other than that, like it's just using Q correctly. This is how Q should be used. He should be used as this sort of guiding, helping hand, but sort of causes mischief and makes Picard sort of confront things about it himself that he doesn't necessarily want to confront.
Yeah. And this is really the first episode, with All Good Things being the other one, where Q really clearly is trying to help Picard, just in a really kind of assholey sort of way. But he's still, you get the sense at the end that like Q is actually, in his own way, is trying to help Picard, and that's what you get out of All Good Things as well. But I think this was the first one where you really felt that, and it made Q a more complex and interesting character than he had previously been. If you look at Q in season 1, he's just he's kind of a two-dimensional character. Like he's just this, this intergalactic, like, I don't know,
Loki type.
I'm trying to think of the word. Nif. No. What's the word?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyways, I've just been drinking some wine, but so yeah, he's, I don't know, just kind of trickster, type character, and he's kind of two-dimensional. I think he develops more once you get into season 3. Once they got the good writing, I think.
Yes.
They start developing him a little bit more, and then once you get to this episode, he's truly a complex character. And then I have said many times, the writers of that season of Star Trek that shall not be named, they did not understand. Like, they should have really studied this episode and really understood how to make Q an actual kind of antagonistic mentor for Picard. They didn't know how to do that in that season that shall not be named. And they end up like, oh, give me a hug.
No, yeah, the first is like, oh, this isn't a help. He even said at the start of the season, like, I'm not, this isn't a helping hand. This is a penance. Ah, and it's like, I fucking hate you. I'm going to try to kill you. And then all of a sudden, it's like, give me a hug. I just wanted a hug. Like, oh, God damn.
Yeah, no, that was. They should have studied this episode in All Good Things to see how to properly write Q.
And plus, like, Q is still funny in this episode.
Yeah.
It has one of the funniest Q lines of the whole show when he says, "Is there a John Luck Pickard here?" I still fucking love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how they were able to really take this kind of, I don't know, I would say like a throwaway backstory from Picard that was just put in the crappy season 2 episode with Picard and Wesley. Or was that season 1? I get it all mixed up, but it was season 2. Yeah. It was.
Oh yeah, Samaritan's there. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was season 2 because Pulaski was there. Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of this nothing, like, forgettable story that the writers went and picked out and was like, oh, this is actually an interesting backstory for Picard that we can explore and show how he has these regrets. But it turns out this thing that he really regrets is what made him the man he is today. And I love that they were able to like do that. The way that they were able to pick out the story from the crappy season 2 and just turn it into something that really enriches the character of Captain Picard.
Yeah. Yeah, I just can't believe you, Brandon, saying, sorry, Mark, I hate that line. How can you hate that line? That's one of the best lines of the whole show. But it's funny, I was watching this podcast who are like the newbies to the watching Star Trek for the first time, or at least there's 4 of them, 3 of them are, and they hated this episode. And I was just like, and I went in the comment section, it was filled with people being like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, everyone's saying that, and rightfully so. Like, they just don't like Q. Like, every Q episode that came up, they didn't like. I was like, oh, surely they're gonna like this one, but no, still didn't like it. I'm like, yeah, they're totally in the weirdos about that one. Q just wanted yes, exactly. All right, so let's move on to number 6. Number 6, I mentioned earlier at the top of the video, is Frame of Mind, 34 points. High Five 789 was the highest, had it at their number 1. I think this is number 6. Yeah, this is number 6 on my top 10.
Yeah, this is another one that made my top 20, but not quite my top 10. I think I had it like number 13 or 12 or something like that.
Yeah, someone put it on their worst list. I got this comment before of several people. I remember when I first started my channel saying that they hated this episode, and I was like, what? And I've had this impression that like a lot of people hated this episode, but apparently not. It's not that many, but I don't get it. Like, this is, I just love the mind-bending, mind-twisty fuck with the reality shit, and this is one of the best examples of it. Like, I think Jonathan Frakes, like, this is easily his best performance in the show, and I think how going back and forth and really fucking with things, and especially when it gets weird towards the end, when like he shoots it with a phaser and the things just like shatter into squares and whatnot, like that. I just fucking love that shit. I just think it's so good.
And they really like mess with your expectations, because the assumption is that, well, obviously we know Riker isn't really in a mental hospital, so obviously the Enterprise is the real is reality, but actually neither of them were reality. And I kind of love how like, I remember when I first watched it and the Enterprise storyline started shattering, and I was like, what the hell? Like, everything was shattering into glass, and they just really fuck with you, and I think it's, especially for the time, just a really, and for a a Star Trek episode, not even a movie, like, it's such a brilliant. I think most movies at the time that tried to do this kind of thing didn't do it as well. Like, just, the mind-bendy, twisty. And it's eerie. I think I would put it as one of the creepiest and eeriest episodes of Star Trek as well.
This was in my top 10 creepiest episodes.
Yeah.
I think it was like number 5 or something. Yeah, it is absolutely like that scene where he's like starting to see people on the ship, and he sees that one like woman who's talking to her spoon show up on the ship. Be like, don't let them tell you you're crazy. And he's like freaking out and runs to his bedroom, but then it turns into a cell, and he's like screaming, "Let me out of here!" Like that was creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
That was such a creepy scene.
Yeah, I will agree that overall this was a great performance by Jonathan Frakes, but I do have 3 words for you.
I didn't think that was a particularly terrible performance.
It wasn't terrible. It's just a little bit over the top. A little over.
I don't know. I still liked it. I don't know why. I don't know why he had to put his upper lip.
It's a little bit of overacting. It's not terrible. It's not William Shatner level, but it's
I don't know. I did like to make fun of it, but I still liked it.
I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just
but I love like at the end when he's like when he starts pushing the other dude, like people in the audience start get up and cheering. That's so awesome. But I want to backtrack for 1 second to talk about Tapestry again, because Jay Kamen 99 was saying, was it Jay Kamen? Yeah. So why Tapestry isn't in my top 10 is because when he became a lieutenant junior grade, that was his hell. I hated that. Most of us live and work in the lower decks. That shouldn't be regarded so negatively. And that's exactly, I mentioned that podcast I was watching that hated this episode. That's the exact reason they cited. They're like, oh, they're putting down people who work in regular jobs and saying that, oh, that's hell for him. So he's this aristocratic high up, what makes him so important. And I don't get that. I really don't get that message from him. I get it that his whole personality is geared towards being a captain, and that if he did something different, he wouldn't be where he believes he fits. That's not saying you can't be happy in being in a job like that, being in the lower decks. It's not that. I think that's a wrong message.
But I don't even think in it. I wasn't even thinking of it in terms of what his job is. I was thinking more internally, like being the best person that he can be and giving it his all, and just being the best human being that he can possibly be, and help the most possible people, and give everything that he has. Whereas if you're not living up to your potential and you're just kind of meandering, I don't give a shit about your job. I'm not talking about jobs. I'm just talking. So I think that's where I disagree with that. I think I would take the job part out of it, and it has nothing to do with jobs. It has to do with in your internal ambition and your internal being the best person that you can be, as opposed to not being the best person that you can be and just kind of being very mediocre when you're capable of so much more. I would feel like if I'm not feeling I'm at my potential and I'm not doing my best, I feel shitty. I don't give a fuck about jobs. Take jobs out of it. It's just a matter of being the best you that you can be. And that's how I see it, regardless of what position you are in life. That I don't think that to me that wasn't the point. The point was it was more internal.
That was put very, very wonderfully. Took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was getting at. Yeah, that is more about his internal journey. So yeah, that's why I disagree with that podcast. I should post in the comments. But anyway, they already had tons of comments. People arguing with them about it. Anyway, okay. Let's see. And Jay came in 99 being negative again, saying I don't like frame of mind. They go back and forth so much that after a while it just gets annoying, and like they did the same thing in Future Imperfect. Future Imperfect is good too. I don't have a problem with Future Imperfect. Like I don't see what the problem is going back, and that's what makes this episode so good, is that it blends reality. Like what the fuck is actually happening? Like I love that, but everyone has different taste, I will say. So maybe some people just don't like that. But anywho, all right. So, get to number 5, an episode I would never have in my top 10, but it's a fan favorite. Number 5 is Cause and Effect, 36 points. Greg Marley was the highest, had it at their number 3.
Wow, so that's 3 episodes that weren't in my top 10. I wasn't actually expecting this many. So yeah, Cause and Effect, I think you like it less than I do. It did make my top 20. I believe it was 15 or 14 or something like that. But not quite top 10. And I think you have it further back than I do. So this actually predates Groundhog Day. So
yes.
So this was like the first time loop thing that I ever saw. And I don't know. Do you want to talk about why you don't like it as much? I don't know.
So yeah, for me, this would be a top 40. So, like I said, I still like it, but I don't know. I know you disagree with this, and I say this every time. It feels like you're in a loop because I say this repeatedly, but it feels too repetitive even for a time loop story. I look at more modern day time loop stories, and they don't feel as repetitive as, oh, we're just doing the exact same thing over and over again. There's more variation on, and again, I don't blame this episode because, as you said, it's one of the first time loop stories, but the other ones had more to build off of. But in retrospect, like, I still judge it by that, saying it doesn't age well as compared to other time loop stories because of that. But what I do like about it, and what makes it unique even amongst the more modern time loop stories, is that how they remember a little bit. It's more like a deja vu feeling, and they remember from each loop going forward. And so that's what I do like about that. I still give it an 8 out of 10. Like, people act like I hate this episode. I don't hate it. I still give it an 8 out of 10, so I still like it a lot. It's just not nearly as much as everyone else does. And of course, the ending with Frasier pisses me off because they should have spent more time explaining exactly what the deal with him is. I was really pissed off that it ended right there. Because it doesn't make any sense. He couldn't have been trapped in a loop for 80 years because they would have been able, if they're moving at the same rate as the TNG crew of remembering shit, they would remember everything from each loop by that stage. But anyway.
I don't think it was ever clear if they were necessarily stuck in the loop for 80 years.
It wasn't clear. That's my problem.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. And yeah, I 100% disagree that it was too repetitive, but we don't need to get into an argument about it again. I didn't see it that way. I thought it really did a nice job of building off of each loop and changing it up. I thought it actually does I actually think the opposite of it, that it does a really excellent job in that. And then Brandon asked, why not top 10? And Mark gave their answer. My answer is, there's just too many good episodes, and there's some that I like better. I mean, that's really all there is to it. I don't really have any major issues with this episode at all. I just have other ones that I like a little better. And I think, this is somewhere in my mid-teens. I forget exactly where it landed, but 14, 15, something along those lines for me.
And I also think, for me, just generally speaking, I tend to gravitate more towards character-based episodes, and this, to me, didn't come off as they had some character moments with Crusher, but it was more about the weird thing that was happening, like, compared to something like Frame of Mind, which I thought was a strong character story for Riker.
Yeah. I can see that, but I don't think an episode has to be a good character episode for me to like it. Although it does help a lot.
Yeah, I do. I just gravitate more towards it. So was it someone in the chat? Sorry, I lost it. They're asking me about Cause and Effect and what other Star Trek time loops episode do I like? Was it the Discovery one? No, this Cause and Effect is better than the Discovery one. I think Discovery one was okay. I didn't dislike it.
I mean, how many Star Trek time loop episodes were there?
There's the only 2 I can think of.
The only 2, yeah.
Yeah, when I was talking about other time loop stuff, I was meaning outside of Star Trek.
We did a whole top 25 of
Yeah.
time loop movies or time loop stories, I think.
Like the one that did in X-Files, I loved. I thought that was
Yeah.
better. But if episode that's similar to this that I think is better is Timescape, which that didn't quite make it.
That's the one that I figured immediately
Yeah.
that made my top 10 that I figured didn't make the collective top 10. But now there's two others that I'm curious to see which didn't make the collective top 10.
All right, so up to okay, so now this is where we're getting to the significant jump. So we go from 36 points to 75, so more than double, and it is yet another episode you won't find on my top 10, and that is the best of both worlds. 75 points. Greg Marley was the highest, had it at their number 1.
What number are we at now? I lost track.
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay, I have this at number 3. Yes, and then we know, Mark, that you find it to be overrated. Overrated, but yeah, to me, this was like really. I mean, you can look at Borg in a different way and say that was a good Borg episode, but I think this was the last truly great Borg story because once they bring in the Borg Queen, it just they lose the original like creepiness of the Borg and just they were this unstoppable foe because of the fact that they were one mind and they didn't have one leader. That made him eerie, that made him creepy, that made him unstoppable. So the Borg Queen just completely went against what the Borg was about. But I don't need to get into that again. But I remember when I saw Q-Who, like I was just waiting for them to do the Borg again, and I didn't watch seasons 3 and 4 when they originally aired. I went back and watched it later, and I remember when I first saw it, like because I didn't have any idea what episodes I missed because I went back, I started watching in season 5, and I missed a whole 2 seasons. And I had to catch them as they came on a rerun. And I remember, like, when it came on a rerun, I missed part 1. And I just saw part 2. And I was like, oh my God, they brought the Borg back. And just remember being so excited about it. Because the Borg were just such this ominous foe. Yeah, I'm assuming Jordan Johnson's being sarcastic, unless you've never watched my video.
No, I took it as serious. Maybe
really?
You just hadn't seen your videos on this.
Yeah, because I've done nothing but rant about the Borg Queen for years now. Just so she's one of the worst. She ruined the Borg. Like, this is what the Borg was supposed to be. But and then we can get into it's the greatest cliffhanger ever made on television. And I'm so glad that I didn't have to sit through the whole summer and wait for it. In fact, I actually saw part 2 before I saw part 1. So.
Oh, you did?
But I remember when the first time I saw part 1, I was like, holy shit, they were making people wait for the whole summer. Oh my God, I would have died. And I still that scene every single time just gives me chills. Do 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 do, Mr. Worf. So I did an hour-long video about this when I did my top 100, so I don't need to go on about it anymore. But
I do agree that it's one of the best cliffhanger of all time. And when I did a list of best cliffhangers, this is my number 1. And I love the music. The music was up there on my music list as well.
Yeah.
So I will say my opinion of this episode has gone up. Like, this is top 30 for me. So still good. And I give it a 9 out of 10. I used to give it an 8 out of 10. But the one episode I don't mind this episode making the list, and I thought it was expected. The one episode I'm very, very glad didn't make the list or was nowhere near the list was Q-Who, because that is the one that's way overrated. But anyway, but this one making the list I'm okay with. But yeah, because I mean, the only thing I didn't really like it was much about it was this whole Shelby storyline. It just wasn't, and she didn't really do anything in part two. Like they built her up in part one and kind of didn't do much with her in part two. And I don't know. And I did feel like part two wasn't nearly as good as part one, but it was still like the disparity between the parts is nowhere near something like Descent or Time's Arrow, which is just that is just all part two was a piece of shit. So nowhere near like that. But I do think there's a slight disparity there. But I still love it. I still do see it as one of the most suspenseful, intense episodes of TNG.
Yeah. Oh, and I absolutely agree about the music. The music is so good. That scene where they first come across the Borg, and it's like that vocal,
Oh
like,
yes.
whoa! Picard is like, in subspace to Admiral Hansen, we have engaged the Borg. And then Star Trek has beat that to death. But every time they always say we have engaged the Borg or we have engaged something. Like they've done it many times. It's like, okay, it worked the first time. You don't have to keep repeating it. but yeah, the music is just fits so well.
But you're talking about Borg episodes that came after this. The Scorpion was good. That came after this one.
Oh yeah. That's true. But the Scorpion didn't have the Borg Queen in it.
Yes, I think the Borg were actually good on Voyager before once they introduced
put the Borg Queen in there.
Yeah. Because
how about Gerardia Borg? Did she make you hate the Borg Queen more or less? Well, there was impossible for me to hate the Borg Queen any more than I already did, so it did nothing to change that. It was just another way in which I could hate the Borg Queen, but it didn't increase my hate for her because it was always already impossible for me to hate. But they've even admitted that the reason why they wrote the Borg Queen is because they didn't think that they could have this collective presence as a villain. They thought they needed a face. They thought they needed one, and they've said that many times. And so basically they invented the Borg Queen, not because she fit in with what had been previously established, but because they wanted to sell movie tickets. Even though I highly disagree with that premise that they couldn't have used the Borg as they were on a feature film. In fact, it would have been a much better feature film if they had just kept the Borg the way that they had been.
Yep. Indeed. And then I don't know. I never thought I could hate the Borg Queen more than I did on Voyager with her saying Janeway. But yeah, Picard season 3 finale that ruined it. That was even worse. But anyway, just stop doing the fucking Borg. Stop doing them. Like you already killed them. They're not good anymore. Anyway, so next we'll get into our number 3, which is only 3 points ahead, so 78 points. So close one is The Inner Light. Ricky, Kyrie 091, Stephen Kennedy, and Brandon Neal Howes, all the highest at their number 1. And this would also be my number 1, but I didn't include my list. But yeah, this number 3.
Yeah, I ended up bumping this back from I forget where it was before, 4 or 5, back to number 7, because I bumped it back in my top 100 as well. Because this episode has gone on a journey for me. Like where when I first saw it when it aired, I always thought it was boring as fuck, and I just fell asleep during it and didn't get it. And then over time, really grew to appreciate not only the concept but just the acting. I think, and so then I had it up a very, very high for a long period of time, and so it's still number 7. It's still in my top 10. So just to be clear, it still makes my top 10, but it's not in my top 5 anymore. It drops off just a little bit, I think, because as well as good as Patrick Stewart does in this episode, it's just him, and I like character episodes that involve other characters as well. So I think that's the only reason it slides touch, but it's still number 7. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying the episode sucks. It's my top 10 in the next generation, but maybe not quite as high as it used to be, but still a great episode. And I believe Lower Decks has parodied this at least twice.
Oh yeah,
there was the one with the what was that?
It was the Betazoid gift box. And they like shot it with the inner light. I love how they just had the inner light. It was like a laser now, the inner light laser. And they shot it. It was like, I miss my wife. And then the more recent one was Mariner being like trying to recreate. Oh, I want to do an inner light and trying to learn how to play the flute. Yeah. So yes. So I have a sneaking suspicion that we might be talking about this episode soon. But yeah, no, I mean, come on, people can deduce this is my number 1 TNG episode, and it's funny because I don't know if you remember this, Alyssa, but when I first saw this when I was 14 years old, I did not like this episode.
I didn't either when I first saw it.
Oh, really? Yeah. It wasn't just me. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is boring. And it's funny, like the older I got, the more it grew on me. And eventually, I just absolutely fell in love with it. I think I love the subtle nuance of it. I love, like, the ending, I think, is absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely perfect that he just takes out the flute and starts playing. Just that simple motion, it just evokes all that emotion, the whole journey he went through. It's the acting, the writing, like, and the character exploration. Like, I hear what you're saying about it just being a Picard episode, and it is better to have ensemble episodes. But for me, I just think this is just such. And I love the pace. Like, to me, everything about this is the closest to perfect that an episode gets in TNG, because everything about the pacing, I think, is absolutely perfect. The way it goes through his life so fast, and yet it doesn't feel like you're reaching, like it's hitting all the important beats, and it feels like you're experiencing this lifetime within a span of 45 minutes. And so you can empathize, sort of relate to Picard of experiencing a lifetime in 25 minutes. And some people complain about the scenes with Riker and of Crusher on the outside, but I didn't have any issues with it. I think they were good to sort of break up. I think if they just stuck with Picard, I don't know. I think it's good to sort of break.
I would have complained if they just stuck with Picard the whole time. At least we got to see the other characters a little tiny bit.
Yeah. All right, but yes, we'll talk more about this episode soon. So let us move on to number 2, All Good Things. 98 points. Alex Woolham was the highest, had it at their number 1.
I had it exactly where it is, number 2.
I believe, is this different? Yeah, it was my number 2 as well. So I had it at number 2.
I'm still easily the best series finale in Star Trek.
Easily.
Yeah, and I think one of the best. I would still call it the best series finale of all time. I know you have a couple that you have ranked higher, but
just one.
Just one. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it is among one of the best series finales of all time, because it does what so many other finales try to do and fail, but it succeeds, which is to successfully wrap up the story of all the characters and bring back nostalgia from previous seasons and tie everything together in a way that services the characters and not it just doesn't become like a a glorified clip show, like Seinfeld. just, just like where it actually. I mean, I feel like so many series finales attempt to do what this one does, and they all fail. This is the only one that it just puts a beautiful bow on top of this amazing series, in a way that no other series finale was able to do.
Will echo everything said there. Absolutely one, and it's just barely like it's almost tied for my favorite series finale of all time. So it's just barely below that other one. But it's easily the best and of Star Trek. I think the only one that comes close is What You Leave Behind, but Vic Fontaine ruins. But yeah, no. So it's again, it's I think the best use of Q. The way he drives the story. I love how he doesn't even enter the story until like halfway through the episode, because it's a 2-part, 2-hour long episode, and yet they still has like he's the presence who's like driving everything because he's the ones that's having Picard moving back and forth through time. And again, I love the way they play with shit at the start by having like when he's in the future, he's seeing those post what do they call it? Post-atomic horrors, those people from the trial going screaming in the field, and it sort of adds to him feeling like he's senile or or not really, and people don't believe him, like so this is like, as you were saying, like a great like ensemble episode. It really dives into the episodes, to all the characters. Although they do that stupid Worf and Troy thing a little bit in this episode, but it doesn't hurt it too much. It's not a main focus of the episode. It is interesting comparing this to modern Trek to Picard and seeing how similar it actually ended up being. Of course, they took inspiration from this episode.
Yeah.
But
and then I can't say enough about the way they use the time jumping. To me at the time was very like Slaughterhouse-5-esque. Later on, Lost, little show called Lost, would do an episode similarly where just the way that I love the cuts of when like you'll be in mid sentence and just all of a sudden is like, and you're in a different or you're finishing your sentence in a different time period, and just everything about it just works so well.
That Lost episode was the constant. They actually talked about how the writers, they showed this to the other writers, showed all good things, and said,
this is what we're going for.
And it's so great because moments where like Picard is smiling and then he's transported in the past and he's talking to a Romulan. It's like, why are you smiling at him? Or like he runs and rams into someone in the hallway. It's just beautiful transitions. The whole like production, the music is amazing.
The music is amazing. I think one of my favorite transitions, and this is kind of like, I like to make a joke about it because it's funny, but it's also like all of a sudden you just see Tomalak going, "How long are we going to stare at each other across the
that's the one where he was smiling. Yeah, he comes back smiling. Yeah, and I love how they got like little cameos of people who appeared in the show. Like they got Tomalak. What's that Admiral guy's name? The guy who's in Measure of a Man, the Admiral from Measure of a Man, had him. And, and a few other like nice Easter eggs and call outs. I was just watching the commentary on the Blu-ray, and they said the original script this guy had a copy of the original script, and it said that Geordi's wife was Aquiel, and they somehow changed it to Leah Brahms. And I'm like, why? He should
I
have
don't
kept
like
it.
either of them. I don't, and that's the one credit I will give to Picard season 3 is they did not say Geordi's wife was Leah Brahms. They didn't actually say who his wife was. It's just a woman that he meets after he leaves the Enterprise. That's fine. It doesn't have to be somebody we know.
I would have preferred Aquel to Leah Brahms because
I don't
Leah
think it should be either one of them.
really, but the Leah Brahms has this.
Yeah,
much
no, I don't.
creepy
No, I
element
agree.
to
I
it.
agree. I prefer Raphael, but I would rather just be like some person he might have out of the show. Like, but anyways.
So Jordan Johnson's saying, what characters beside Picard appear in all 3 timelines? Isn't it all of them except Troy of the main cast?
Well, not Tasha Yar.
I mean, the main cast, the 7 main characters. It would be all of them except Troy. But is there anyone else outside the main cast who appears in all 3? I don't think so. I think it's just there's 6.
Worf does, Dr. Crusher does, Riker. Yeah.
Oh wait, Riker. If you count the Dr. Crusher doesn't. She's not in the Encounter Farpoint. That's right.
Oh, so she's not. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not or Geordi. So Dr. Crusher and Geordi. So it's not the whole main cast. I was wrong.
So Geordi wasn't in the Encounter Farpoint. That's right, because they're not, and Riker isn't either.
Yeah.
They're not.
Well, Riker appears on that one.
Yeah, that's true.
So that counts.
It's a scene out of
Arsenal of Freedom.
Arsenal of Freedom. Yeah, but yeah. So technically, yes, Riker does.
So technically, it's Riker. So if Picard, Riker, Data, and is that it? Worf.
Because Worf is on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Encounter Farpoint.
Yes.
He's in the present. He's in the future. Yeah. So Worf is in all 3.
So it's Picard, Riker, Data, and Worf.
Well, Jordan Johnson is not counting Riker.
What? Well, I don't care. I'm counting Riker.
I mean,
he was in there.
He was there. Like it wasn't Dave Jonathan Frakes, but it was the character Riker. So I would count Riker.
Anyway, all right. So let us move on. Oh, you got the wrong window. So our number 1, which is yesterday's Enterprise, 118 points. Norman Buckwald, Captain Powerless, Jordan Johnson, Maddie Jester, and Alyssa all had this as their number 1. So, Alyssa, are you happy your number 1 made it to the collective?
I'm happy my number 1 made it to number 1. I thought there was a good chance that it would. I know that it's a very popular episode. It was number 2 in my top 100 of the entire franchise. So, and it is my favorite. I don't know. Again, I did like an hour and a half long video about it, but I could just go on and on and on. But I think to me, this is I said this in my my video that I did on it for my top 100 that I see this as kind of like the true growing the beard episode. And I know you'd like to put that at the beginning of season 3 because that's when things got better. But I think that this is when the show became a hit. Like this is when it captivated audiences. It was pretty good in season 3 up to this point, but this is when this is peak Star Trek. This is when the show became truly great. And I joked about like what would be the proper phrase, like drinking the prune juice or something like, as opposed to growing the beard, because yeah. So just so many different reasons why this is. I mean, I always love the alternate timeline stuff when it's done well. I've seen it not done well many times. Picard. I think this is like done perfectly, and the transition when you first see it, just like all of a sudden you're in the parallel universe or the alternate timeline rather, and Picard looks back and Worf is gone, and there's Tasha Yar, and you're like, what the fuck? Tasha Yar is there, and then they develop that over time, and having Tasha Yar being a main character and kind of questioning her death the way that fans had done for many years. Like she says, well, it sounds like a meaningless death, and I don't like that. And I think that's like one of the biggest complaints about Tasha Yar's death is that fans saw it as a very meaningless and hollow death. So that they took a fan complaint and incorporated it into the storyline and made it work. It was pretty impressive. And I've also this ended up as I believe number 2, I think, or 3. No, number 3 on my top 10 best romances in Star Trek with Shooter McGavin and Tasha Yar, Lieutenant Castillo and Tasha Yar, because they didn't fall into the trap that so many other one-off romance episodes, like almost all of them, fall into this trap of trying to make the romance into something more than it actually is in one episode. And some of the worst are like Meridian with Dax and Goodwin, where they try to make it into something that it's clearly not. And this worked because it's more of we really like each other, but we understand that we'll never really get to know one another enough to develop this deep love. So we're going to just grab onto this moment and enjoy every moment that we have. And it works so well. But yeah, I can just go on and on and on because there's so many different aspects of this episode that just work really well for me.
Well, it's funny because I recently did a video where I was talking about the growing the beard thing, and yes, I still think it depends on how you define the term. Because for me, like the end of season 2 and the quality, just as soon as you get to season 3, the quality in writing, production, everything shoots up. I still see Yesterday's Enterprise is when the show hit its stride. So I agree, that's when the show became like the best show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, was the Offspring first and then this, right? And then Sons of the Father. It's like this 3 good episodes I heard in a row. So yeah. But anyway, it's when the show got really, really good. But yeah, absolutely loved it. That's what I swapped around because I originally had this at my number 5 and Tapestry at number 4. I was like, no, that's not right. Let's swap that around. And so this landed at my number 4, but I still love it. Like it's one of the best episodes of all time. So I don't begrudge anyone putting this as number 1. I'm very happy at where it landed. It makes a lot of sense. I agree with absolutely everything you just said about the Tin Castillo and the different times. Another thing I love about this episode is that they don't try to hold your hand. They don't I feel like a lot of modern television stuff would try to walk you through what's going on, but they don't. They just boom, alternate timeline immediately, and then later they'll sort of back explain it, whatever.
Yeah, but they still don't over explain it.
Exactly.
You still have to get it. You're like, oh, okay. You just gotta. They're trusting the audience to pick it up for themselves and not having to over explain it, and that's brilliant. I thank you, Star Trek, for trusting us as intelligent human beings that we can figure this shit out on our own.
Yeah. Oh, Jordan is saying, is this episode then Offspring? Okay, I don't remember.
Yeah, it is. I think that is because I think that's why to me this was this is it.
Oh right, yeah.
And I forget exactly what it because I know I like Allegiance better than a lot of other people, so I kind of count Allegiance in there. But there's this series of episodes that there's 4 or 5 in a row that are just fantastic, and I think it starts with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Come cheer up my lads, sorry. That is a good episode. But now, yeah, so yeah, it's an amazing episode. Yesterday's Enterprise. I would still like to see Captain Garrett come back in a Modern Trek show. Like I didn't really mind how they portrayed her in Section 31. Like I don't think it ruined the character, but she was like a one note, I'm Starfleet here to keep an eye on you kind of thing. But I thought the actress did a good job. So I think if you get like a good writer in there and get the scenario that doesn't suck and isn't rushed, then you could do something good with this character.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, she like really like inspired like just this one short, and she wasn't even in this episode that much, but just the little bit she was in, like as you say, like inspired so much, like inspired Janeway and Voyager and stuff.
Yeah, when I rewatched this again recently, it was like, wow, they really drew a lot from this character to create the Janeway character, particularly how she is really stubborn with Dr. Crusher. It's like, no, you can't stop me. I'm going back to my ship. But like that's exactly how Janeway was as well. And I just feel like, yeah, she was kind of the female captain archetype, which they didn't copy for Janeway. They didn't copy and paste, but they kind of drew from her a little bit. It was inspired by this character a little bit.
I gotta double check. I'm pretty sure I heard that this actress returned to play the Klingon in the episode Suspicions, which I hope isn't true because I hated that episode.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think she played a Cardassian on Deep Space Nine too.
Yeah,
once, but she did a damn good job in this episode. That's sure. And this is only the first time I saw Shooter McGavin. You said you were already familiar with him, but I hadn't seen him before this.
Yeah, but he was in a lot of things in the 80s as a bad guy.
Like Matlock and
yeah. No, not like Matlock, but like I looked it up. Yeah, maybe L.A. Law. I looked it up, and there were like TV shows. I don't remember what they were, but when I did my video, I think I Googled what he had been in, and there was actually only a handful of things that I had seen, but he had been like a bad guy in a whole bunch of things, and then he was Shooter McGavin, and then which this actually aired before Shooter McGavin. Billy, what the fuck is that movie called? Not Billy. Happy Gilmore. But I think I saw it after I saw Happy Gilmore because I didn't see it actually aired. I think, or it's possible that I didn't know him as Shooter McGavin yet, but I just knew him as a bad guy because I definitely know this actor always played bad. Christopher McDonald was always
Well, I know I do remember clearly that I saw this episode first because I remember going to see Happy Gilmore and being like, "Hey, it's the guy from yesterday's Enterprise."
Yeah.
But it kind of off topic. But did you hear that they've already filmed and made a Happy Gilmore sequel, and she's Christopher McDonald and Adam Sandler returning for it?
I want nothing to do with that. I just I don't even care that that's the thing that happened.
I'm probably gonna watch it out of curiosity, but I have no expectation that it's gonna be any good.
Oh, it'll be terrible.
Yeah.
It's gonna be terrible.
I think the best I can hope for is, it's okay. It was all right.
I mean, to me, that's a movie that didn't age as well. Like, I thought it was the funniest thing of all time when I was younger, and now it's like, it's I don't know. Adam Sandler movies and even Saturday Night Live skits don't age as well for me.
Yeah. I still like Happy Gilmore. I think there are definitely some outdated jokes in there, but I still think it's funny. Yeah. It's the only Adam Sandler movie I still like. But anyway, all right. So
I mean, I still like the I ate pieces of shit like you for breakfast. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
Yeah. That's still a good line, yeah. Didn't I say like when we did our yesterday's Enterprise live stream instead of a joke like that? Yeah. You eat shit pieces of it. Someone didn't get that joke. It's like, why are you saying you eat pieces of shit? All right, so let's go ahead and recount the best list in its entirety.
I will wait. I'll raise my hand again, but when it gets to my number 4, which didn't make the list, I'll go like this.
Oh, I won't be able to see you because I'm looking at the list.
Yeah, but everyone else will see.
Yeah.
My number 4 of my top 10 of all time favorite Next Generation, and I think it was like number 8 in my top 100.
Did not make this. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tied for number 48, Future Imperfect, The Arsenal of Freedom, Ensign Row, Half a Life, and Brothers. Tied for number 46, The Quality of Life and Gambit. Tied for number 41, Sins of the Father, Elementary Dare Data, The Nth Degree, Power Play, and Unification.
Power Play, interesting.
Yeah, some people like Power Play. I think that was actually Brandon who put that one in there.
It's fine, but I didn't know people liked it that much. That's cool.
Yeah, I was watching a lot of reviews that were really high on it. I think it's mediocre, but that's anyway. So 30 tied for number 35 is Sarek, Conundrum, The Wounded, The Survivors, Time's Arrow, and Descent.
Interesting.
And tied for number 32, Q Who, The First Duty, and Deja Q.
Okay.
Tied for number 30, Symbiosis and Thine Own Self.
Haven't gotten to any of mine yet. We'll keep going.
Number 29 is Dark Page. And tied for number 26, Ship in a Bottle.
That's my number 4.
Yeah, now I remember. As soon as I said it, I was like, oh, yeah, that was your number 4.
That's my number 4. Is my number like 8 or 9 in the whole franchise. But
yeah, so the only points this episode got was 7 from you and 1 from someone else. So it got 8 points in total.
What? I thought more people liked it than that.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised in that too. But anyway, so tied for number 26, Ship in a Bottle, Lower Decks, and Starship Mine. Number 25 is The Chase. Tied for number 23 is Family and the First Contact episode. And tied for number 20, The Measure of a Man, Preemptive Strike, and Disaster. Tied for number 18, Timescape and Remember Me. Number 17 is Face of the Enemy. Tied for number 15 is Darmok and Clues. And let's see, number 14 is I, Borg. Number 13 is The Defector. Number 12, tied for number 11, is The Drumhead and Reunion.
Yeah, so the Drumhead almost made it. That was in my top 10.
Oh, yeah. So what were the ones that was the Drumhead, Ship in a Bottle? Was there another one?
Timescape.
Oh, Timescape. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were all mentioned. Yeah. Reunion was in my top 10. It was just outside. And the Drumhead, actually. No, Drumhead was my top 20. That's right. But yeah, I was surprised the Defector was really high.
Yeah. It's a good episode. I just haven't really I don't think much of it.
I really like it.
Yeah.
Didn't make my top 20 though.
Darmok is in my top 10 most overrated episodes. I think that episode is incredibly overrated, and I'm glad it didn't make the top 10. Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. Sorry.
So Darmok has had the opposite effect of Best of Both Worlds for me, where I like Best of Both Worlds better with time, and Darmok I'm starting to like less and less the more I see it. Like I think last time I watched it, I gave it a 7. I was like at a 10 before. It's that language thing just doesn't make any.
It doesn't make any sense. What is how you can't have a language that works that way? Like you need to be able to say simplistic things like pass the salt. What are they going to say for pass the salt? Conchar at the dining table. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. That just. And then how does that work with the universal translator? Like, they have to be speaking some other language that the universal translator isn't interpreting in that way, which they don't touch on at all. So I don't know. I think it's silly personally. But that's just me. I know people. Sorry, Aaron. I know people like it. I just like, to me, it's just the whole concept of it is a bit silly.
And I think if they did have a language like that, then they would need a base language. And if they
That's
had
what
a
I'm
base
saying.
if they had a base language, they would be able to communicate with Picard. He would just be speaking a funky dialect. He would just be talking in a different way, but he would understand them. Because they're saying Darmok on the ocean. Well, how the fuck do you know what an ocean is if you don't have a base language?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Some people call that nitpicking because to be fair, there's a major plot hole in the Inner Light as well, and I still love that. Like the whole thing, like really, these primitive people can create this probe that can latch on to an alien they've never met before and make them relive the whole life. But
and did it not ever like come across anyone else before? Yeah, I mean that's a. Yeah, but that's just, I don't know.
It doesn't bother me the way that the Darmok one. It's more like, I don't know. You can
because I don't know, if you ignore the plot hole in Inner Light, it's still a great episode. To me, if you ignore the plot hole, I mean, yeah, if you ignore the plot hole in Darmok, or if you focus on the plot hole in Darmok, I should say, if you focus on the plot hole in Inner Light, it's still a great episode. If you focus on the plot hole in Darmok, there is no episode. Like it's the plot.
Yeah. That's true. Anyways, we're just going off on rants about Darmok now. So we'll go ahead and end this discussion here. It was a great discussion. I'm very happy to have a lively chat today. Thanks for everyone for joining. Sorry, couldn't always get to your comments. There was Aaron, Brendan, Neil Howells, Norman Buckwald, Jake Heeman 99, Jordan, and I believe there was a few other. Jake came in 99. Did I say that already? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, a few others who dropped by earlier. But anyway, thank you all for dropping by. Very much appreciate it. And of course, thank you, Alyssa, for co-hosting this with me. I know how much you like to. It's good to reveal like these random lists. But yes, thanks so much for joining, Alyssa. And if you wanted to shout out what you're up to, what's going on, and yeah, what's going on with you right
now? Nothing. I'm on Alyssa Team's reviews. I'm not doing much right now, but you can check out all the videos that I've made previously, Star Trek and whatnot, and my top 10 of 2024, if you'd like to. We'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do in the near future. I thought about doing a Severance theory video, and then I started second guessing my theory, so I decided not to do a video on it. I probably will end up doing something on Severance by the end of the year because I'm really into that show. I think at some point I probably want to talk about what's going on in the world in this country with trans people, but I need to let that sit in for a little bit. So I'll probably do some things coming up, but don't have a lot of plans. But just come over and look at what I've done previously on Alyssa Jean's reviews.
Did you have a chat with Wine coming up, or am I just
March?
Oh, March. Okay.
Yeah, I do it every 3 months, and the last one was December, so March.
Oh, right.
So next month.
Cool. And if you're finding me for the first time, my name's Mark, Channel's Enchantment of Eternity. I have now reviewed every episode of Star Trek Next Generation and I already did TOS, so you can check out my channel for reviews on every single one of those episodes. And now on to Deep Space Nine, into season 3 of Deep Space Nine, and going to start Voyager soon as well, and review those side by side. So another year and a half, maybe, we'll be back here for the Deep Space Nine viewers top 10. I got to finish reviewing that first, and doing Voyager at the same time is going to make it go more slowly. But I'm already 2 seasons in. But also have my top 25 favorite episodes of Star Trek, down to my last two, number 2 and number 1, 2 this month, 1 next month. Wonder what they could be. Like, I don't know who hasn't figured it out by now. But anyway, yeah, so those will be coming up. And yeah, just check out, you can check me out, podcasts, wherever you can find good podcasts, and yeah, that sort of thing. And thanks everyone so much for watching. Thanks for submitting your top 10s, or at least just joining us for the revelations. Very much appreciate everyone's support for the channel, what keeps me going. And yeah, we'll see you all next time.